Welcome to the 33rd episode of Tokenizing Everything, our weekly interview series with thought leaders in the blockchain industry. Today's guest is Husen Kapasi, Engagement Manager and Blockchain Lead at PwC Germany. Before I begin, I have to mention that all opinions are solely personal and do not reflect the opinion of Amazing Blocks, PwC, or any other involved parties. So it's a pleasure to have you here today. How are you?
Great. Thanks, Nicolas, for having me here today. It's been a really great time to be speaking on this topic. And I mean, we have been discussing a couple of months, I would say. So really happy to discuss on this very hot topic of today. How are you doing? I mean, we have really nice weather here in Munich.
Yeah, I'm also doing well. The weather is also finally we're in the summer in Germany,
Exactly.
right? So yeah, it's really exciting and also covering in regards to the topic of the supply chain, something that has not been covered too much yet in the podcast. So I'm really excited for what's ahead today. But before we really dive into this, let's start by you could give maybe a brief intro of who you are, where your background is in the blockchain space, and yeah, just kind of your
Happy
career
to do
path.
so. Yeah, thanks. Happy to do so. So I'm leading, the blockchain business at PwC Europe. So what we have done is we have gathered, all the countries together and combined the efforts because it's on all the emerging technologies. So we don't work on a country level, but on a European level. So I'm leading the blockchain community over here from PwC side, where we are mainly divided into two major groups. One is all around crypto, which addresses FS, crypto, financial and capital markets, and the other one is enterprise blockchain, which is covering the blockchain application of all rest of the industries, not non-financial industries. And I'm leading the community on the both areas, right? But my focus is on the enterprise blockchain, that how we really apply blockchain in rest of the industry. Until now, it has been a very exciting journey. I have worked across 9+ industries, how we develop the use cases, how we implement, also doing the POCs and also the implementation project. And my background was also before in IoT. So that's why I enjoy really the projects which we get nowadays. We're combining IoT analytics and blockchain, and that's what keeps me busy nowadays. And especially, in 2021, we see there is a tremendous request, especially on the visibility part, in the industry, that how track and trace of the product, provenance of the product, especially the topics coming in, with the COVID fraud cases and so on. So I mean, a lot of companies are now looking into it. And it has been a very exciting time.
Yeah, also, first of all, very interesting, and I'm really excited to dive into this topic a bit more. But also, what struck out when I kind of checked out your bio was that you also offer pro bono consulting on the topic of
Yes.
assisted living, as well as advising Indian students for master studies in
Yes.
foreign lands. So could you maybe share some insights on this as well? Because I think that's also a very crucial part of your CV, so to say.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, I came to Germany for my further studies, right? So, I mean, I understand, not only I would say now Indian students, but also more or less all the students, especially here from TU Munich or also from Uni Stuttgart and so on. And I support a lot of them, especially for the master thesis, because I mean, I'm supporting. I mean, I have lost account how many students, especially on the master thesis, aren't answering few of the questions and so on, because I mean, this is going to be the future. And I mean, those are going to be really working in the industry, and that is how we develop also the networks. I'm really looking forward and helping across, I would say now, Germany, from University of Hamburg, Berlin, also from Frankfurt, right? I mean, a lot of students from FSBC where I have also supported them in the master thesis and so on. So that is how I engage really with the university students over there. And assisted living has been a topic, which has been very close with me, and I mean, that is not related to blockchain, but I mean, definitely we can put blockchain in that. But I mean, that is something also very relevant here in Germany as well as in India. And that's why I have been tracking that topic since 10 years. And this is more or less more how we can digitalize complete senior living, right? So, I mean, there are homes, especially in India, which are really, not so sophisticated, I would say. And here in Germany now, more and more senior homes are being updated using technologies that you have completely real-time information about the health and so on. I mean, that is some space, which apart from my blockchain activities, I really keep track on, and I really try to help different startups, whether it's in terms of getting the investment money and so on, where I really support in my free time. Yeah, so that is something I do.
Yeah, I mean, props to you at this point. You know, offering pro bono consulting is not someone everyone does. So really, you know, I think a lot of people appreciate what you're doing in that regard.
Yeah, thanks for
So,
that.
of course. So let's you know get into the blockchain topic a bit. You know, people always explain or talk about a certain, you know, wow moment, so to say, that really made them excited about this topic. You know, what was it really for you that made you interested in terms of working in the blockchain space in general? And was there that specific moment where, you know, you basically realized, okay, I want to, so to say, go all in almost on this space, or was it more of a gradual process?
For me it was go all in. So but yeah, nevertheless it was coming also from my day-to-day work, right? So I'm myself electrical engineer, and
Mm,
I didn't wanted to lose track of my old bachelor studies which I had done. So when I did my master's with focus on strategy, I said, okay, I want to be in a consulting, but in a consulting is always very broad and we need to have our
mm,
own focus. So I really had a focus on digital transformation always. And before, as I mentioned also, when I started my career path in consulting, my always focus was IoT, first of all.
mm,
And I did a lot of digital strategy project, digital transformation project in the time frame of, start of 2014, which was a really booming time for digital transformation. And in one of the project, I got involved in a smart home topic. And in a smart home, there were some devices like smart fridge and so on, where you need to say, okay, you can order to the supermarkets directly the items which you're missing, if it's a milk or whatever. And then there was a question like, okay, the home Wi-Fi what we have can be easily hacked. So how can we
mm,
enable the security that we provide enough security if we attach the credit card to those smart devices? Right, nowadays it's very common, right? But at
mm,
that time the people were thinking how we do it, right? And I came across this topic at that point of time, on the blockchain, and it struck me interest. And then it was really the time of 2016 and 17, where we saw really tremendous growth of this. And I started tracking all the kind of activities on this scape, especially at that time was very hype in energy. Energy was also very,
mm.
blockchain in energy especially, and supply chain, right? A lot of, especially, the diamond tracking was one of the most popular use case by at that time. And I realized, all the projects which are ongoing, that visibility and traceability is going to be one of the key topics, which blockchain can solve. So I decided, really to focus, at that point of time, really to get into it a little bit, get understanding how this landscape is growing. And the complete scale, blockchain space was growing then in 2017 tremendously. So 2017, I moved completely and started focusing on 100% on blockchain. And from initial time itself, my focus was on enterprise blockchain, because crypto blockchain was not really the focus, because I'm not coming from FS, but how we really apply this technology. And I had also done some, myself research and publication also on how we apply blockchain in assisted living, especially in the healthcare. So blockchain in
Mhm.
healthcare is always my favorite topic to discuss in free time also, apart from supply chain. So this is how I have been working on this space now 3-4 years. And one thing I would like to highlight again is, what I'm doing is I'm maintaining good of both the worlds. So I'm
Mm,
doing both normal supply chain transparency project at PwC, as well as blockchain projects, because what is happening today is a lot of blockchain enthusiasts and blockchain startups also, I would say, they really miss the flavor of supply chain processes and what really supply chain solutions, what is available in the market, can do. And on the other hand, those supply chain experts and supply chain cloud-based solution, they really have no clue what is happening in the blockchain space, which is growing tremendously. And it's really important that we bring the best of both the worlds together and really understand core processes of supply chain, because we are not going to turn the businesses directly with some innovative blockchain startups, right? So this is really what I'm trying to do. And that's what I mentioned before, that since 3-4 years, I'm continuously trying to achieve and understanding where exactly we use blockchain for, because in 2023 there is not a question coming up and saying that 2025, I would say more long term, I would say, but that do we need blockchain or not? It would be an integral part of the IT architecture. Yeah. And
yeah,
this is what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
that I fully agree with, right? I think
Yeah.
it's definitely going. We may not even realize when we use it, but it's just going to be around,
Yeah.
right? There's always a comparison made to the
Exactly.
internet, and I think it definitely applies on that regard. So you already mentioned, one or two challenges, you experience throughout your day-to-day business, right? In regards to kind of also bridging IoT and blockchain in general. But if you kind of zoom out a bit, what would you define as the maybe top 3, 4 obstacles throughout your, consulting work when working with clients, especially on the one hand when working with blockchain startups and how to kind of integrate IoT into their day-to-day businesses, so to say, and on the other hand, when working with the IoT sector, the industry 4.0 sector in general, and how to migrate certain aspects of their processes to the blockchain?
Sure, that's a really good question. So, I mean, there are two answers. I will take first answer, towards the blockchain challenges, and then I will come, regarding the IoT and blockchain. So, I mean, the blockchain challenges I highlighted, the first one is really the awareness and understanding of the topic in detail, as I mentioned already. So, a lot of companies, you might have seen that they are doing a POC, but then they think, okay, blockchain is really not of a great value, and they are not able to make a business case out of it, and that's why they didn't pursue it. But the challenge is, they didn't really understand what is really the value of blockchain, because track and trace you can do with a lot of solutions out there in the market. You don't need blockchain for that. What you need blockchain for that is how you enable the payments behind it, how you enable the document flow behind it. That is where, really blockchain ensures and encrypts your information, that it's not easily hackable, like how it is in the cloud, if it's in a cloud, right? So, I mean, this is really the value. And I mean, this is a very high level. So, I mean, so first and foremost is education, right? The second is, a lot of companies run standalone blockchain projects rather than a digital transformation project. So, they have an innovation center where they have, specially dedicated budget for blockchain, IoT, AI, analytics, and so on. And they always care for like the small world, where they want to say, okay, how we can make this successful in a big thing in the company. But that doesn't work, because all these technologies need to work together, go hand in hand, and really try to solve a business problem and have really a business case behind it. And that is what will drive really the transformation in the company. And this is what really is missing. And the third and the biggest one is, blockchain. I always say to this company, a lot of companies just go into it, because it's really cool and they want to be, in the game, but they forget, that it's really a team sport. I always repeat this, because it's not really about 2 or 3 companies with whom you work together and you explore blockchain, because that doesn't add value. It is really an ecosystem play. So you need to really have players where you don't get into touch normally. So tier 3, tier 4 of your value chain, no matter which business or which industry you are. And that is where the problem of data sharing comes up. The company doesn't want to even share the data with their own suppliers and the trusted party and say, okay, it's my data. I don't want to share. I don't want to know them a secret, but they don't get it. Like, this is going to be not the war of data, but completely the war of future business models, how they stitch around. And this is, the 3 main challenges, which we normally face for blockchain. And now when I talk about the IoT and blockchain, I mean, a lot of companies in the IoT phase, right? I mean, they are also working and developing some cloud-based solution, right? And they promise a lot. If you see their website, that they are enabling all the complete stakeholders and so on, data sharing, everything. But in reality, sometimes it's not like that. What they market. So they really need IoT data is 2 ways, right? Either you use only for your company, or for example, in case of track and trace, especially because that's a really special case for blockchain, you need to really have the data sharing across the value chain. And how you enable that data sharing, if you do it between 2 parties, I mean, that's fair, completely fine. But in track and trace, you need to enable the data and availability of that data across the value chain. And that is where the value lies. For the data sharing in a secure way, you need blockchain for that. I mean, that is the understanding which we need to have between different startups. I mean, you see a lot of startups in blockchain space now. They're combining, the blockchain IoT offering, that they are offering also the sensors. And I mean, there are also nowadays very promising startups coming in Europe, who offers, the physical to digital conversion for blockchain. And I mean, they are hitting the nail directly spot on, addressing those problems. But I mean, if you see other way around in the IoT space, I mean, this is something, which is missing. And again, as I mentioned before, that we need to really think a holistic manner, that how we bring everything together, and not also only IoT and blockchain, because you need a lot more than that. You need to have a proper clear data, you need to have your master data, and you need to have your cloud environment in place. So I mean, there are a lot of prerequisites before you even develop the joint platform of IoT and blockchain.
Okay, yeah, thanks for this good overview. I think now we definitely know how to address this
Yeah.
sector in the future a bit more in details. So generally, you also mentioned it before, on the one hand, there's obviously the enterprise blockchains or the private chain, so to say, and there's the public chains, right? And in regards to the supply chain, it is often discussed, okay, that potentially permissioned chains could be a bit more effective there at times. Could you maybe share some insights on your experience and what you think is potentially best to be applied in the supply chain sector?
That's a very diplomatic question I always get, and I would again highlight that I was speaking in one of the conferences few weeks back only, and there were some companies who were building some solutions on public blockchain, and I mean they were completely preferably saying, and so okay, public blockchain is the only future, and there is no blockchain, if there is no public blockchain. However, I would say in a way yes, but I won't completely agree, because if you see again, the landscape, especially in industry, is massive. So if you, again, being a supply chain expert, I would say let's have a look on supply chain, right? There is really different worlds in supply chain operations. There is procurement, manufacturing, supply chain and logistics, and the customer retail experience, right? So those are really the 5 or areas nowadays, where we address in this company. And especially also along with this physical flow, there is a documented into information flow, and payment flow. That is what we call as a trade finance, right? So if you see the trade finance, so we categorize the complete two: supply chain providence is one case, and the trade finance. If you see the trade finance, trade finance is full of banks, transport companies, freight forwarders. And if you see the complete blockchain landscape, what they're developing is completely in consortiums. So there is no single company developing it. And there are different solutions. There are hybrid solutions, there are public solutions, there are public-private solutions, all coming up. On the other hand, when you look into the industry, there are companies like Walmart, and few others, who are exploring all kind of solutions, private, public, and hybrid, and all those stuff. Now, how to address the debate of public and private blockchain? I would say let's have a look into the history, how internet developed. And I would say, in 1917 exactly was the time how where we are today. And there was always a discussion of VPN and the internet, right? And what do we see today is the companies still have the VPN, where we manage all our communication, internal communication, sharing of documents, and so on. And there is also internet, which works very simultaneously, or I would say very smoothly. I would say there is no debate whether we are going to use only VPN or internet. And I would say it's going to be the same in blockchain. There is you won't be able to control and transform the complete industry. That we use the public blockchain or private blockchain. And there would be a hybrid solution, and there would be a position and point of time that where everything works together simultaneously. And that's why today the interoperability is a big topic, and it's going to be the next big topic for the next 5 to 10 years, because I mean this is going to happen. We cannot control the complete landscape or the companies who are working on private blockchain, and we cannot say them that okay, public blockchain is only the future, and you need to only work on Ethereum. That's not going to happen. So
Yeah, I think I was also going to mention, interoperability, I think really is the key, right? I mean, we already see it to a certain extent also with, like people that always argue, private chains are more centralized potentially. And yes, could be. On the other hand, they're more efficient at times as well. And also, I think sometimes I also draw a comparison to this type of layer 2 solutions, for instance, which are also a bit more centralized, right? So it's just going to be a dynamic exchange of data from all these and value from all these different ecosystems, I think. And here you mentioned it correctly, interoperability really is the key. So thanks for this great point on that regard. Before we dive into the tokenization part of today's conversation, just a quick question from the Being Crypto community. They wanted to know, what is your personal favorite tokenization use case? I mean, it could be in a supply chain sector, but maybe it's something different. I don't know.
My favorite tokenization use case, that's a very good question. So I definitely would say I have a favorite use case in automotive industry. I wouldn't be able to name it because of the reasons I hold the position, but it's a really for peer-to-peer marketplace. So you can buy a spare parts directly. So if that's a use case where if your headlight or tail light is broken, and normally you go to a workshop, you order that.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have it, they order to BMW or Daimler, whomsoever, right? And then they order to their respective supplier, be it a Bosch or whatnot, right? In this marketplace, you can actually just say, okay, my tail light is broken, and it opens the complete network, like which workshop has your tail light available in your near network, like a Google map, right? And you can just click it and order it, and you can get it fixed right away. So it includes not only the product offering which you need, but also the service offering. So that is like having things on the tip of your finger and you get it what you need at your time. So I mean, that is going to be a revolutionary, that especially in the after sales or spare parts market, or after service, whatever you call it. And I feel it, that is really revolutionary. I mean, you see a lot of kind of use case in automotive especially, but also in other industries like energy, right? You see those kind of use cases, but energy, it's not coming out very clearly nowadays, or you don't see real life example because of the regulatory challenges. But I mean, this kind of examples you will see, I would say, in a very near future. Yeah, because I mean, this is super solving some real life problems and very practical. And I mean, it's just when companies come together, it's just a matter of time. Yeah, so that is till now my very favorite use case, apart from different use cases out there, especially in the insurance market as well as the invest market. But being an enterprise blockchain fan, that is my favorite use case till now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate. It's hard to single out one specific use case because there's just, when you think about the token economy, there's just so many, right? It's so many exciting.
Exactly. I mean, if you see also the insurance space, right? Like the airplane insurance, like if your flight are delayed, you get like a micro insurances, right? Those kind of stuff. I mean, that is super innovative. I mean, that saves a lot of time. It saves all the hassle, and it's revolutionary, I would say. I mean, everybody would, without thinking, just opt for that, right? So I mean, those are really also the revolutionary use cases coming up, and it will completely change the industry. So I mean, answering only one would be really difficult, as you mentioned, but I mean, this is really which came on top of my mind and have been following since a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very exciting one. And also maybe what's interesting to know, and I know you're probably, or I think you're probably an expert in that regard as well, is when choosing which token type for applying tokenization within the supply chain area. I think for certain use cases, obviously the traditional ERC20 standard, when looking at the Ethereum blockchain makes sense. Others, maybe NFTs, right? NFT is a big topic. And then there's also other token types, like when just staying in the Ethereum ecosystem, ERC1400 and so on, which are a bit more of a hybrid. So what do you personally think is the best tokenization use case to be, or not use case, sorry, the best token type? And on the other hand, where do the different token types find their role within the supply chain ecosystem?
That's a really great question. So I mean, I would start with the, we normally start, we cannot work without frameworks, so that's how our minds are now set. But I would again start, with a framework, like what are really the token models, right? So I mean, we have really, three token models, what we see normally in the industry, right? Really, one is really the, the asset token or security token, what we see, right? The other one is really the utility token, right? And the third one is really the payment or commodity token, what you say. So these are really the three tokens, and that also refers to the tax offering and so on. So I mean, this is how it relates, right? This is, where we really start thinking about that, how you decide on the tokenization. And I mean, there is no best token answer, because I mean, it completely depends, especially in industry, what is the application you're trying to build, right? Because if you see those tokens again in types of technology, right, that how we said there are fungible tokens, right? There are non-fungible, what we call as NFTs, and then there is a security token, right? And each of these tokens has its own purpose, right? So if you see in supply chain itself, right, if you see from supplier to consumer, everybody plays a different role. And if you think about what are the top three reasons for using tokens, first of all, the first one is really the incentivization. That is really the biggest topic, that industry will think about token, that why they will need token. And in incentivization itself, there are four major areas. One is really the monetizing the info, that why each and every company will share the info, right? Rewards. If I'm a patient, or if I'm a user of certain product, if I want to give a feedback, I need to be monetized, so that is really the rewards and loyalty. All right. The third one is really the machine-to-machine communication, especially, if in case of 3D printing and so on. So there are really those 3 or 4 areas, where you see a major incentivization mechanism behind it. And if you think about that, there is a separate request of token. You don't need NFTs for that. And that is how you first of all decide, which type of token you need, right? Is it a fungible token where you need only the payment, or something like just a payment token, which is number of availability over there you can get. So this is how you define. An example is energy web token, right? So I mean, that is a really specific example where you see that energy industry, you need to multiply and play with your tokens as a utility in your ecosystem. So that is really the first type, right? The second is, again, the proof of provenance, right? And this is again kind of a digital twin of any product, be it a luxury product or art or real estate property, right? So I mean, real estate, I would still put it in third category, but I mean art or any luxury bag or any diamond or anything, right? So where you need to highlight that it's authentic item, each item on SKU level, and then also you need to prove, where it came from and so on, and highlight the complete journey. And here, for example, could be possible that you need probably NFT, that you highlight exactly that that's a unique item, which is there is no duplicate of it, right? It's only single piece over there. And then you can also show the complete path of it, right? And there are also market examples available in the market, right? So that's the second type I see, right? And the third and the last type is really, all about the efficiency, like how you leapfrog efficiency. I would again quote leapfrogging efficiency. It's not really 5-10%, but you completely change the game, especially in the trade finance, right? So how you really take the time where you share the documents in 20 days to few hours. So this is the type of efficiency we are talking about. And this is where you initiate your smart contract. And for that smart contract execution, you need different type of tokens, right? And this is probably the utility tokens which you use in the ecosystem. And here, for example, one of the example in the trade finance is CargoX, right? For bill of lading, for example, right? So that could be the one. And I mean, there is, first of all, I would say, you need to go and understand how for which reasons you are using the token, which type of token in terms of technology you need, right? Is it a fungible, non-fungible, or security token? And then you think about different standards available in the industries. Yeah. So this is how I normally always recommend, to the client. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very, like sophisticated overview of the different areas that the token can be applied to, and you really have to then kind of individually adjust the different token type that you apply. So when looking at the entire life cycle process though, and how to integrate, the tokens within it, right? It starts from the supplier, it ends at the consumer. How could you maybe could you guide us through this process, and where and how to actually apply the tokens in general?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And very continuing to the discussions we had. So, I mean, the reason I highlighted those 3 areas was also one point, again, I would like to highlight. That doesn't mean that in one ecosystem we will use one token, because it could be possible that in one ecosystem we have utility, payment, as well as security token, all 3 of them together, and that again, we need to think how everything works together. That is really the topic over here. And when we really think why we need all 3 of them, we need to really understand the requirements and the usability of the token across, for example, in our case here in supply chain, right? So if you think on suppliers, so let's start with supplier, right? If you think of supplier, why will they use token, right? Because ultimately, companies with whom we are going to position this, right? They really won't care about tokens. They just need to solve a business problem and how they can gain the efficiency or make a new revenue models, because this all what we are talking about is all behind the curtains, what happens behind the curtains in technology, like internet protocol, what is happening. So if we again come back to the point and see, okay, why suppliers will care to use token? I mean, that is for them is how they can validate the buyer, where they are selling, because they need to receive the payment for that. And how they can validate the buyer is they need to validate their identity somewhere in the ecosystem, in the decentralized network. And for there, they will need token to incentivize them, that somebody can validate the buyer. So for example, that is one case. There are then growing requirements, especially in Europe, right, with the sustainability reporting, CO2 emissions, and so on. I mean, so they need to also provide the sustainability assurance and guarantee. So I mean, for that, providing that certification, there would be a certain smart contract attached to it. And I mean, for that, they will need probably a separate type of token. So there's, for example, that's a requirement of supplier. Then if you go towards the manufacturer, right, I mean, as you highlighted IoT, a big requirement for machine to machine communication. So I mean, there will not be a complete change of business model, so no company would like to then buy complete asset, but probably as a service. The machines and robots would be as a service, and then for each of the production of a car or any product, there is a per unit mechanism behind it, and for that you need to transfer tokens between the machines and between the entities. I mean, that is really one of the biggest use case companies are already exploring today, right? And also they need to develop a certificate or digital twin of a product, I would say, as a kind of a product authenticity certificate, right? So this is why manufacturers will use tokens. If you go ahead and look at the transport guys, because transport is a really simple business, from A to B, and why would they care for token, right? So I mean, for them, how tokens will make their life easy is by providing the proof of delivery, so they don't need to really provide a complete information to companies, where it is and provide, because I mean, in future real-time traceability, we have it today, but it will be still sophisticated and it will be part and parcel of life, and there are a lot of automation attached to it, and they don't want to get attached with all the specifics. They want to definitely automatize the process. And I mean, proof of delivery, right? Tracking information collection, because I mean, they also need to collect information from various parties, right, who are doing the last mile delivery and so on. So they will also need some tokens for incentivization to different parties, right? And also creating a logistics marketplace, because I mean, you need to book a container for a ship, also you need to book an empty container where you can position your boxes, right? So I mean, there are a lot of entities, companies interlinked to this complete business. And I mean, logistics marketplace would be super efficient if there are tokenization. If we still attached with them, traditional financial process, I mean, even though having that marketplace won't make sense. So I mean, this is where transport companies will start thinking about tokens. If you go towards the distributors, then after that's the next steps, right? They would like to use token to claim the damage claims. So I mean, directly hitting the insurance claim, right? I mean, they don't want to wait nowadays it's 2 months, cycle till you get the returns of the money and so on. They don't want to do like that. They want to have instantaneous returns and so on. So I mean, insurance claim, right? Product verification that whatever the product they have received is really coming from the original supplier or coming from some other countries which is not supplying the fraud products, right? Especially a big topic for pharma and retail. So this is why they will use tokens. I mean, in retailers, right, what we also directly engage with, they need rewards for loyalty, right? I mean, today also we have it, but I mean, how can you make a complete ecosystem where you can use tokens, instead of directly, using for some money? And also the instant chargebacks, right? If you want to return something, you need to still today wait for getting the money for a couple of days. But if you just return and instantly get your tokens in the same time, I mean, that is really the future, what we see. And then last but not the least, I mean, consumers, I mean, that is why, all the companies will start using token. One of the main and the foremost reason, multiple options or multiple reasons, right? I mean, first of all, sharing of information, like in healthcare, you need to share your information if there are some disease or allergies on the feedback, right? Feedback on the product, right? Marketing of the product, especially in the Facebook, how we see, and Steemit, and so all of those platforms coming in, ethical behavior. If they are driving green, they will get some tokens, right? For example, also for providing or payment for, so that now this is the other way around for the consumer, that if they want some real-time traceability, really real time on the critical items, they need to pay for that. And I think that could be also tokenized. So I mean, these are some reasons across the supply chain, if you think that why you will use tokens and how companies will be enforced to use. I mean, these are really some strong reasons that if you attach that, it cannot be separated if you want to digitalize it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it gave us a very coherent overview of the different aspects. So I can really see you deal with this probably every day. So you have a very in-depth knowledge of this. So really very also thought through an explanation of the entire process. Coming to the end of today's conversation, I just have one last question that I always pose, is whether or where do you see blockchain in general in 10 years from now?
So I mean, we launched the report, our global report last year in October, where we highlighted what is the future of blockchain in 2030. And we saw, it's already 2 trillion economy, just the blockchain, almost 2 trillion economy. And I mean, interestingly, we highlighted the 5 use cases which will drive that, and the first and the foremost and the biggest one, almost $1 trillion economy is regarding the provenance, supply chain provenance, and that beats also the FS, and the reason is, it's not that it will completely change. The reason is the business it's going to make out of it, right? Because FS is, yes, we are digitalizing the currencies and so on. Of course, that's a complete revolution. But here, the provenance business, touches multiple industry, multiple companies, and the way we do the business. And that's why the impact. So what we did is that this $2 trillion economy is the net economic impact, that how much it will impact the GDPs of the country, and in terms of job, in different aspects, we calculated it. And if you see that, provenance as a use case has the biggest impact, and that's why I'm super optimistic, that it will completely change, how we deal with the products, how we do the business, how the company develops a business model, right? It will completely change. And again, I would like to highlight one thing which I really like it, and highlight also to most of the companies. All the companies, what are dealing today are more or less, blockchain inspired solution, because the real definition of blockchain is that, it is decentralized, distributed, immutable, tokenized, and encrypted, right? And if you see, most of the company today exploring blockchain solution are either having, distribution, they are immutable and encrypted, but they haven't touched on tokenization yet. They haven't touched and say, okay, we are using token. I mean, I have been talking with companies on daily basis, and they, okay, let's do blockchain, but keep tokenization aside, because that's something they see for the future. They are really also not exploring that how we can use it, what could be the use case today, because they just don't think it's a part of today. But I mean, blockchain is only complete when there is a tokenization behind it. That's the first reason. And I think the second topic, which we will see in the near future, as I mentioned before, also 2025 or 2030, is the interoperability. And interoperability, I mean, there are multiple solutions coming out in the market, right? Which solves document sharing, information sharing between the blockchain. And I mean, there are some solutions already today, which has also, multi-token concept, right? Or also cross tokenization, I would say, where you can actually exchange the token, seamlessly between the blockchains. I mean, there are solutions coming up, but not much. But I mean, these are the topics, because as we already saw that in one ecosystem, there won't be only one token, there would be multiple tokens, or one token with different aspects of it, right? Which are going to be used. So I mean, this is where interoperability, and then the one of the major drive would be the regulations. So I mean, once regulations will be there, I mean, company will be enforced doing it, and I mean, that will completely drive, the tokenization into the companies. So I'm pretty much very optimistic, by 2030, as I mentioned before, that the company won't discuss, whether we need it. I mean, company would have the understanding that, okay, why do we need it? Where do we need it? What are the use cases? There would be only concept that how are we going to roll out, into the companies. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think today's keyword really was also interoperability. So we definitely keep a close eye on this in the future, as I do also think it's becoming increasingly relevant, right? And more people are working on that topic. So yeah, thanks so much for this great and insightful conversation today. It was really a pleasure. And yeah, I hope to have you back sometime, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me. It was really a pleasure discussing on this topic, and also addressing some of the key questions which was not addressed before. So really appreciate that you're taking care of it. And yeah, pleased to speak to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And also to our listeners, as always, thanks so much for tuning in to the conversation, whether on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And yeah, if you have any questions in regards to how to apply blockchain and tokenization in the supply chain, IoT, and Industry 4.0 sector in general, I'm sure you can reach out to Husen, as of course. And then on the other hand, if you have any general questions as well in regards to real world asset tokenization, you can always reach out to me. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day, guys.